The door was unlocked for all 2,847 days. On the last night, I turned the brass handle the same way I had every night for almost 8 years, and this time, the house did not punish me. Nothing stopped me. At 9:17 in the evening, I wiped the Schlage F10 passage lever with a square I had cut from an old gray Temple University t-shirt. That was part of the routine. Wipe the handle, turn it, feel the latch pull back, then sit down before the third chime. There was no deadbolt, no chain, and no keyhole on my side. The door opened inward, and the first wooden stair began 11 inches past the threshold. I knew the measurement because I had spent years measuring everything with my fingers, my feet, and the cardboard edge from a cereal box. That night, the chime never came. The room beneath Cal Mercer's kitchen was 8 feet, wide and 10 feet long, with 2 layers of drywall over each wall and gray mineral wool packed behind it. A white noise unit was mounted somewhere above the ceiling. I could not hear traffic or rain. On Sundays, if I pressed my cheek to the floor drain, I could feel the garbage trucks shuddering along South 4th Street. That was my calendar. For most of my captivity, I believed the unlocked door was the cruelest part. Touch the lever, and 3 descending electronic notes played through a ceiling speaker. Take 1 step, and a woman screamed upstairs. Reach the 3rd stair, and a monitor on the wall lit up with somebody I loved tied to a chair. Sometimes it was my roommate, Tessa Nguyen. Sometimes it was Nate Keller, my ex. Once, it was a grainy view of my older sister carrying groceries into her house in Westchester, with a red circle drawn around her youngest son. The clips changed, but the rule did not. The first time I tested it, I got both hands around the 3rd stair's banister before the screen changed. My sister's front porch appeared. A man in a Phillies cap walked behind her car and lifted 1 hand toward the camera. The feed cut black. 10 minutes later, a photograph slid under my door showing the same man holding her house key. I did not know whether it was real. That stopped mattering. My stomach emptied on the concrete, and I spent the night with my back against the mattress, counting every person whose address I had ever given Mara. Back away, or someone pays. On day 2,847, the fluorescent strip over my mattress blinked out. The fan stopped. The white noise died so suddenly that I heard my own breath scrape in my throat. Somewhere outside, a transformer had failed. I counted the silence. 1 Mississippi. 2. At 14, I touched the lever. No chime. At 22, I opened the door. No scream, just static. At 41, I put 1 foot on the 1st stair. My knee buckled so hard that my shin hit the edge, and I bit my thumb to keep from making a sound. There was nobody there to hear me. My body did not understand that yet. The kitchen above me was empty. A bowl of peaches had collapsed into brown syrup on the counter. 3 unopened envelopes lay beneath a refrigerator magnet shaped like the Liberty Bell. The digital clock on the stove flashed 12 o'clock, then 12 o'clock again. Cal was not waiting with a knife. He was not there at all. Near the basement door, taped to the wall, hung a laminated emergency exit diagram. I had seen it thousands of times from below. It showed the stairs, the rear alley, and a red arrow pointing toward the back door. The print date in the lower corner was May 23, 2017, 4 months before I disappeared. 11 months before that diagram was printed, I still thought Dr. Mara Voss was the safest person I knew. My name is Leah Price. I was 29 in 2017, and I lived at 418 South 4th Street in Philadelphia with Tessa, my closest friend since college. Tessa was 31. Our apartment occupied the 2nd and 3rd floors of a narrow brick row house. Cal owned the place next door. He was the kind of neighbor people described as useful. A package came while I was out, and Cal signed for it. Ice formed on both stoops, and Cal salted them. A pipe knocked in winter, and Cal listened through the wall before telling our landlord which valve to replace, He made his living installing soundproof offices, rehearsal rooms, and home theaters. His white work van had Mercer Acoustical Solutions printed on the side in fading navy letters. He wore tan work pants with a folding ruler in a pocket and always smelled faintly of sawdust. Nothing about him felt intimate. Mara was different. I started seeing her after my mother died on February 11th, 2016. I could still work from home, buy groceries, and laugh at bad television with Tessa. Crowded buses made my vision pinch inward. In grocery lines, my hands went numb. Once, I left a full cart near the cereal aisle because the store's freezer alarm sounded. Mara's office was on the 4th floor of Harborlight Trauma Center, 3 blocks from Independence Hall. She kept the room cool, and the blinds tilted upwards so sunlight touched the ceiling instead of my face. Her clock was always 7 minutes fast. I noticed because I notice clocks. I notice exits too. That probably sounds relevant now, but it was not special. Lots of people who panic in public rooms count doors. Mara remembered things nobody else did. She knew I hated lemon in water. She kept Canada, dry ginger ale in a cabinet behind her desk. When my pharmacy delayed a refill, she stayed on hold for 26 minutes and never once checked her phone. She told me, "You do not have to earn care." That sentence mattered to me then. She had a way of wading through silence without filling it. If I lost my place, she did not rescue me with a question. She would slide the ginger ale closer and let the room stay still. I mistook that patience for respect. Later, investigators found audio files labeled with things I had never agreed to share outside her office. Sister porch, nephew school, Nate anger, and Tessa guilt. They were not therapy notes. The labels were created while I was still paying her to help me sleep. During one session, she placed a Electrofan Micro 2 on the table and tested different sounds while a pulse clip squeezed my index finger. Pink noise steadied her tablet. 3 descending chimes sent it jumping. She made a note and said, "Your nervous system likes predictability." The exercise lasted maybe 6 minutes. Afterward, she asked whether Tessa kept a spare key, whether Nate still knew the building code, and what I did when I feared I had hurt someone without remembering it. They sounded like therapy questions. Mara also made house calls. Twice, when I could not get on the Route 57 bus, she came to our apartment carrying a black leather case and a paper bag with 2 ginger ales. She came prepared. She sat at our kitchen table while Tessa worked in the other room. Tessa handled billing compliance at Harborlight on a different floor in a different department. She had a habit of reading while she ate and leaving sunflower seed shells in a coffee mug. That annoyed me more than it should have. I am adding that because people turn the dead into saints, and Tessa would have hated that. She was not a saint. She was nosy, stubborn, and terrible at folding fitted sheets. She was also the person who stayed on the bathroom floor with me for 4 hours after my mother's funeral. Mara was warm with her too. Warm enough that Tessa once said, "She remembers everybody's birthday like she is running for mayor." Mara laughed. Neither of us understood that remembering was part of her work. Tessa had her own test for trustworthy people. She watched how they treated receptionists. Mara passed every time. She learned the security guard's name, brought muffins for the scheduling staff, and once spent 10 minutes helping an elderly patient find a lost glove. None of that kindness was accidental. She built a building full of people who would defend her before anyone accused her. When Tessa later questioned billing codes, coworkers warned her not to damage Mara's reputation. One supervisor called it spreadsheet noise. Tessa kept digging. On September 18th, 2017, she came home at 8:04 in the evening carrying a SanDisk 32GB flash drive in her fist. She locked the apartment door behind her. "Put this somewhere weird," she said. I asked what was on it. "Billing stuff." "That is not an answer. It is the answer you get tonight." She had found duplicate Medicaid claims and services billed after patients died. Dead companies routed the medication orders. I did not learn any of that until years later. Not then. At the time, she looked pale and irritated, which was her version of panic. The forecast called for heavy rain. At 10:30, I wanted coffee and Advil from the Wawa 2 blocks away. My umbrella was broken, so I grabbed Tessa's green marmot raincoat from the hook. She shouted from the bathroom, "Do not lose my transit card." I told her I was not 12. 6 minutes later, Cal opened his basement bulkhead as I passed. "Leah." "Hey, I need your eyes on something." "Water," he said. A burst line against the shared foundation. If it reached our side, the landlord would blame both of us. I stepped down 3 concrete steps, then 2 more. The air smelled like wet dust and something sweet enough to sting my nose. Cal pointed toward a pipe behind me. I turned, and a cloth covered my mouth. My heel scraped the wall. I remember that. A tiny crescent of white paint stayed under my thumbnail for days. Nothing. When I woke, the digital clock beside the mattress read 2:13 in the morning. My tongue felt too large. A plastic trash can sat near my head, and I threw up into it before I could sit upright. The room had no windows. The door was 10 feet away. I crawled to it and pushed down the lever. It opened. 3 notes dropped through the speaker. A screen mounted beside the stairs snapped on. Tessa appeared tied to a wooden chair, her green raincoat gone, with silver tape over her mouth. A gloved hand pressed a knife beneath her jaw. I stopped moving. The image froze. A distorted voice said, "Third stair." That was all. I backed into the room on my hands. The screen went black. A moment later, the overhead light brightened, and a bottle of water rolled through the doorway. Near the lower hinge, a small blue adhesive dot crossed the metal and the frame. I assumed Cal had marked it during construction. For 26 days, Philadelphia police believed Nate had taken me. He had a motive people could understand in 10 seconds. Nate and I dated for 4 years. 5 months before I vanished, I ended it. He blamed Tessa. The afternoon before Cal pulled me into the basement, Nate left a voicemail saying he was done being treated like garbage and that I would regret making this ugly. He sounded terrible. He was also innocent. Traffic footage showed a blue 2011 Ford F-152 streets from my apartment. Nate drove the same model. A neighbor said he had asked whether I still worked from home. He once had my spare key. He had installed an electrical subpanel in Cal's house 2 years earlier. Then police searched Nate's storage unit. They found my St. Christopher necklace in a plastic bin beneath camping gear. A folded map of Queen Village had South 4th Street circled in red. A shop rag carried my blood. Printed photographs showed Tessa and me entering Harbor Light. The coat mattered too. An alley camera had caught me walking toward Cal's bulkhead. Rain smeared the picture, but the green marmot shell was clear. A detective labeled it, "Property of Leah Price." Nate kept saying, "That is Tessa's coat. Ask her." "Ask Tessa." It sounded like deflection. The partial license plate in the video read KLF 2197, except one digit washed out beneath the reflection from a SEPTA bus. Television loved the match. Nate's truck plate was close enough for television. The television version made Nate look almost mechanical. Producers replayed his voicemail over photographs of the storage unit, then cut to Cal standing on our sidewalk with his hands shoved into a work jacket. The edit worked. Nobody asked why Cal's security footage skipped 11 minutes around the time I vanished. He blamed a firmware update. The detective accepted it because Cal produced a receipt for a replacement router bought at the Best Buy on Columbus Boulevard. The receipt was real. The router was still sealed in his garage. Cal joined the search. He let officers into his ground floor, handed over exterior camera footage. and told reporters I was polite, quiet, and easy to miss. A shelving wall hid the basement entrance. The police never saw it. Downstairs, Cal fed me pieces of the investigation. A newspaper corner slid under my door with Nate's booking photograph. Local news clips played on the wall monitor. Every segment used words like jealous, volatile, and escalating. I thought Nate had hired Cal. That explanation fit the room. Nate knew electrical work. Cal knew soundproofing. Nate hated Tessa. Cal had access to me. I kept arranging those facts until they formed a cage tighter than the walls. 26 days after I disappeared, Nate was arrested. The district attorney stood behind a podium and held up my necklace inside. Evidence bag. PPD 17 8841. Police announced that my blood had been found in Nate's storage unit. A seized laptop contained searches for chemical restraints, residential sound isolation, missing person law, and sentencing ranges for unlawful confinement. A burner phone appeared beneath Nate's truck seat. One message mentioned $1,800 a month and the room. People thought the case was solved. So did I. After the arrest, Cal gave me larger meals for 9 days. A whole apple instead of slices. A turkey sandwich with mustard. Once, a can of vanilla. Ensure still cold from a refrigerator. Through the ceiling, he said. They got the one responsible. Then silence. I sat beneath the vent and tried to understand why he sounded relieved. Above ground, Mara attended a candlelight vigil outside Harborlight. I later watched the footage more than once. She held Tessa by both shoulders while cameras flashed. She announced a counseling fund in my name and spoke about the cruelty of exploiting a vulnerable woman's trauma. People mailed checks. By the time the fund closed, it had collected $482,000. In the basement, the door remained unlocked. That started working on my mind in ways a chain never could. I wondered whether Cal was truly keeping me there. I wondered whether I had agreed to something during the missing hours. There were missing hours. Every few weeks, the ceiling speaker played pink noise. A bottle of ginger ale appeared with my food. I would drink it, sleep, and wake with bruises I could not place. Once, blood covered my right hand and a broken ceramic bird lay near the mattress. The screen showed Tessa afterward. She sat in a different chair this time. Her lip was split. A voice that sounded like mine said, "I did it again." I began writing notes on the wall with a staple pulled from the mattress tag. "Do not drink the soda." Then I would wake and find the words scrubbed away. Mara's treatment records, meanwhile, kept growing. She documented imaginary telehealth appointments with me. According to those notes, I was alive, hiding voluntarily, suspicious of Tessa, and frightened I might hurt her during a dissociative episode. 14 sessions were billed to insurance. I was beneath Cal's kitchen for everyone. Nate spent 311 days in county custody before his defense found the casino footage. From 8:51 in the evening until 1:06 in the morning on the night I vanished. Cameras showed him at Mount Airy Casino Resort, more than 100 miles away. His truck never left the garage. The vehicle near my alley had a cloned plate. Then a lab analyst retested the blood on the shop rag. It contained K2ED-TA. The blood had not come from a cut. It came from a lavender-topped clinical tube. Harborlight had drawn my blood 10 days before I disappeared for medication monitoring. The sample was listed as destroyed, but the signature belonged to a phlebotomist who had resigned 3 weeks earlier. At 6:04 in the morning, someone logged the destruction. The lab's badge system did not activate until 6:26. The searches on Nate's laptop had also been planted after police seized it. Someone used a remote administrative login. The spare apartment key police said he possessed had been sealed inside a Geico renewal. envelope in our kitchen drawer. Every strong piece of evidence fell apart. Nate walked out. He did not help Cal. He did not know about the basement. He had been angry, cruel, and loud, in exactly the way that made him useful to somebody else. That should have opened the right door for investigators. It did not. Police questioned. Harbor Light employees. Mara explained that hundreds of staff members could access patient systems, lab records, and scheduling data. Then she handed over treatment notes describing me as paranoid, unstable, and increasingly fixated on Tessa. The investigation shifted. Maybe I had left on my own. Maybe Tessa knew why. Maybe the two of us had done something no one else understood. Years passed under that version of me. There were rules I learned without anyone stating them. Breakfast arrived at 6:20. The toilet flushed only after the ceiling light blinked twice. If I covered the camera with toilet paper, the room heated until sweat ran into my eyes. If I shouted, the white noise rose until my teeth buzzed. Once a month, a paperback appeared. Never thrillers. Never books with basements, missing women, or unlocked doors. Mostly, I got gardening guides and old travel essays with whole pages cut out. I read a 1998 guide to national parks so many times that I could list every campsite in Acadia. I had never been to Maine. I still pictured Blackwoods Campground when the speaker started. The monitor sometimes showed ordinary footage instead of threats. Tessa buying coffee. My sister pumping gas. Nate leaving a courthouse. Those clips were more effective because nothing happened in them. They taught me that Cal could see outside, and I could not. I began measuring danger by absence. A blank screen meant he was choosing what not to show me. My world shrank to the mattress, the toilet, the vent, and the unlocked door. I counted 2,847 days by scratching short lines under the bed frame where Cal did not clean often. Every 100th mark got a horizontal slash. Cal aged above me. His footsteps became uneven. He coughed through winter. Sometimes he dropped something heavy and cursed. Then the ceiling speaker turned on to cover the sound. He never came into the room while I was awake. Food arrived through the open door after the lights cut out. Haircuts happened during blackouts. So did the medical checks. A figure in surgical scrubs would be there when I surfaced halfway. Clear face shield. Cedar-smelling disinfectant. A respirator that made the voice flat. Open. Swallow. Again. I thought Cal had hired a nurse. The person always brought Canada Dry. On day 2,844, Cal's footsteps stopped. For 3 days, trays still appeared at the doorway, but nobody spoke. The meals had already been prepared and stacked in a small refrigerator outside the room. A timer controlled the lights. Then the transformer failed. The silence lasted 93 seconds. I crossed the threshold. Upstairs, I found a hospital discharge bracelet beside the sink. Calvin Mercer. Cardiac surgery. Pennsylvania Hospital. Admission date 3 days earlier. He had not been in the house. Nobody had. My legs folded twice before I reached the back door. I moved along the wall because open floor felt dangerous. At the alley exit, I stood with my hand on another unlocked handle and waited for the scream. Nothing came. At 3:16 in the morning, I stepped into the alley barefoot. A delivery driver found me crouched behind a blue recycling bin, holding the laminated exit diagram against my chest. He asked whether I needed an ambulance. I tried to say my address. Only air came out, like at the hospital. A nurse cut the elastic waistband from the sweatpants Cal had left for me because I kept clawing at it whenever a monitor beeped. My potassium was low. 2 molars were cracked. The skin beneath my shoulder blades had thickened from sleeping in the same position. A detective placed a paper cup of water near my hand and asked why I had not walked out sooner. I turned the cup until the seam faced away from me. Then I asked him whether he had children. He said yes. I asked how many stairs he would climb if each one might put a knife against his daughter's throat. He did not ask again. The first officers did not understand what they were seeing. The basement door had no lock. There were no chains. My fingerprints covered the inside lever. Mara's records described voluntary isolation and memory problems. Cal was arrested at the hospital. Police tore out the false shelving wall and carried boxes from his house for 3 days. Behind it, they found 21 terabytes of video, food logs, motion records, medication schedules, and folders labeled by date. My name was not on any of them. Cal called me B3. The tiny blue dot on the hinge was not a paint marker. It was an Avery 5795 adhesive seal. Cal photographed it after every authorized opening and replaced it if it broke. 74 times I touched the door long enough to disturb the seal. 74 coded punishment sequences followed. A woman screamed. A family member appeared on screen. Blood showed up after a blackout. The exact response depended on how far I had gone. The unlocked door had been watched more carefully than a locked one. Cal's computer contained instructions for when to play the chimes, when to use pink noise, and how much sedative to mix into ginger ale. The files also explained where to place objects after I lost consciousness and how to reset the room without engaging any lock. Money arrived every month from Morrow Patient Logistics, limited liability company. Cal admitted he had grabbed me and kept me. He admitted building the room. He said he had been paid to hold the billing girl until the client closed the account. The billing girl? An agent asked. Cal looked at my photograph. That is not who I was shown. That sentence changed the direction of the case. Not because Cal became less guilty. He did not. He took cash while I lost teeth, years, names, and the sound of rain. But his files contained therapy recordings made before his first payment. Recordings from Mara's office. Morrow. Patient Logistics led through 2 trusts and a law firm in Delaware. The final beneficiary was Dr. Mara Voss. Her name appeared nowhere on Cal's monthly invoices. It did not need to. Search warrants found the ownership records, then the emails. One was dated May 23, 2017, 4 months before Cal took me. Mara specified 74 sheets of 5/8-inch Type X drywall, Roxol, safe and sound insulation, an independent ventilation line, and a passage, lever, with no exterior keyway. Her instruction was 5 words. No bolt. Interior passage only. The door had never been an oversight. It was the defense. If police found me, Mara could point to the handle. If I accused anyone, she could point to my diagnosis. Cal could say I had rented the room. Her clinical notes could say I hid there willingly. The exit diagram was printed the same day. That tiny sound machine in her office came back too. Investigators matched the 3 descending chimes in Cal's control system to the electrofan. Recording Mara made while the pulse clip squeezed my finger. She had not been measuring what soothed me. She was testing what she could weaponize. Pink noise lowered my pulse, so she used it after the punishments. The chimes spiked it, so she paired them with screams, knives, and chemical panic until my legs folded before my mind caught up. My body obeyed. My therapy recordings had been cut into commands. Some were in Mara's voice. Some were built from mine. That was why I heard myself saying I had done things I could not remember. The cedar-smelling medical worker was not hired help. Video recovered from a hallway camera showed Mara entering Cal's house every 3rd Tuesday at 4:40 in the morning. She wore scrubs, a clear shield, and a respirator. She carried the same black leather case she brought to my apartment. She examined me. She injected me. She placed Tessa's belongings in the room after I blacked out. 96 false clinical notes carried her electronic signature during my captivity. She billed sessions, redirected donations, and kept building the records she would use against me. The fraud underneath it all reached $6.4 million. Dead patients were billed for therapy. Controlled medication was diverted through shell providers. Morrow. Patient logistics sat in the middle, paying Cal and receiving money from the fund created in my name. By the time federal agents reached Mara's house, she was gone. She had used the passport of a former patient who died in 2014. For 2 weeks, I believed Mara had chosen me because I was easy to control. That was ugly enough. Then agents decrypted a file named Nguyen Closeout version 4 PDF. Tessa had been the target. The flash drive she handed me contained 63 duplicate Medicaid claims and payment records tied directly to Mara. Tessa had copied proof that prescriptions were routed through dead patients and fake providers. Mara ordered Cal to take her after work. The identifier was the green marmot raincoat. A burner message recovered from an archive server read, "Green coat equals win. Do not improvise." I had borrowed it at 10:30. 6 minutes later, Cal saw green in the rain and pulled the wrong woman into his basement. The alley footage police used against Nate had shown the mistake from the start. The detective labeled the coat as mine. Nate kept insisting it belonged to Tessa, and nobody listened, because the rest of the frame made him look guilty. At 9:41 the next morning, Mara opened the basement feed. She saw my face. She knew me at once. A task entry created 3 minutes later read, "Mismatch confirmed. Retain as contingency." Retain. Not release, not move, and not correct. No missing person report had been filed when she wrote it. She could have ordered Cal to drug me, leave me somewhere, and destroy the footage. She chose 8 years instead. 38 hours after Cal took me, Mara called Tessa and claimed I had been found in medical distress at Harbor Light. Security logs showed Tessa entering through the employee door at 12:18 in the morning. She never came out. Her body was moved under the identity of a dead patient and cremated through a contracted facility. Mara recovered the flash drive, though she missed part of the backup stored in an old cloud account. The room beneath Cal's kitchen changed purpose after that. I was not merely a witness. I was being manufactured into Tessa's killer. The green coat, the blood, the broken ceramic bird, the edited recordings in my voice, Tessa's belongings appearing after blackouts, and Mara's notes about jealousy, paranoia, and violent dissociation all had somewhere to go. Cal's payment logs included monthly entries for continuity maintenance. Those entries were not about feeding me. They covered staged memories, recorded prompts, forged dates, and rehearsed exits. Mara planned to release me, but not rescue me. She planned to release me into a prosecution. A scheduling file said day 2850 as the self-exit window. Cal was supposed to weaken the routine, leave the house, and let me walk out through the unlocked door carrying evidence planted in my room. The plan was almost finished. Police would find a woman who had hidden beside her own apartment for years. They would find no physical lock. They would find Mara's notes saying, "I feared I had harmed Tessa." They would find videos of me holding objects taken from Tessa's home and speaking in fragments after sedation. They would find a 43-page confession with my digital signature copied from A. Harbor Light consent form. The captivity was not only concealment, it was an evidence factory. Cal's heart surgery interrupted the schedule 3 days early. The transformer failure did the rest. I left before the final objects were placed, before the last recording, and before the confession packet reached the room. Mara had known I was the wrong woman for 2,846 of the 2,847 days She kept me because the mistake gave her something useful, a patient she had already studied, a friend close enough to blame, and a nervous system she had mapped 6 minutes at a time. Cal died from a stroke before trial. Mara remained missing. Harbor Light's insurer argued that the unlocked door and therapy records made the length of my confinement difficult to establish. Their lawyers used the word voluntary 11 times in one filing. 14 months after I escaped, federal evidence staff returned Tessa's green raincoat to me. I did not put it on. The fabric still smelled faintly of plastic storage and the detergent Tessa used, Arm & Hammer with OxyClean. In the inner pocket, I found no transit card and no flash drive. Something stiff caught beneath the lining. I opened a loose stitch with a nail clipper. Inside was a printed inventory strip, B3, self-exit. I called the case agent. He asked me to send photographs and not touch anything else. While he was speaking, I opened the final crime scene images from Cal's basement. One photograph showed the Schlag lever, the emergency diagram, and the lower hinge. Cal was hospitalized by then. Mara had already fled. Police had sealed the property. A fresh blue Avery dot crossed the hinge in the frame. The timestamp read, October 2nd, 2025, at 4:12 in the morning. 19 days after both of them lost access to the house. The dot was unbroken.